like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us today. On behalf of the organizers, I am pleased to announce the opening of the 25th International Music Theory Conference, Principles of Music Composing, Phenomenon of Synthesis. The conference dates back to 1999 and has since become an annual tradition, bringing together composers, theorists, and performers in a shared space of creative and intellectual exchange. Each year has brought a new and distinct topic for discussion and analysis, such as the creative process, sacred music, the phenomena of rhythm, melody, orchestration, sonorism, and many others. Each conference also has been accompanied by a peer-reviewed scientific publication in English. This year is special as we celebrate two significant anniversaries. The 150th anniversary of the famous Lithuanian artist and composer Miloš Čiurlionis, and the 25th anniversary of the conference itself. This year's theme, the phenomenon of synthesis, invites exploration from multiple perspectives, including theoretical and historical viewpoints, case studies, and reflections by composers on their own creative processes. The topic also honors the creative genius of Čiurlionis, whose works stand as a remarkable example of artistic synthesis. The conference program will last for 3 days, during which 24 papers will be presented by scholars and composers from Argentina, Australia, Estonia, Italy, the United Kingdom, Poland, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Georgia, Serbia, Ukraine, and Germany. The scientific program will also be complemented by 2 concerts. The entire event is streamed live on the YouTube channel of the Lithuanian Academy of Music and Theatre, allowing a broader audience to join us online. I would like to express sincere gratitude to the organizers and supporters of this event. The conference is organized by the Lithuanian Academy of Music and Theatre and Lithuanian Composers Union, with the support from the Lithuanian Council for Culture and Vilnius City Municipality. Now I would like to invite Professor Rimantas Janeliauskas, who is the head of the scientific committee and the founder of the conference, to address the audience.
As you know, is dedicated to the anniversary of Miloš Čiurlionis, this great Lithuanian painter and composer. So, I invite all of the prelegents and participants actively to exchange their opinions and share valuable knowledge. Good luck.
And now, before we begin, I would also like to invite the coordinator of the event, Darius, for a few words.
Thank you, Maris. Dear guests, it's a very special day today. It's the 25th conference. It's a nice anniversary. It's and I counted that it's my 10th conference that I have been in the organizing part of. And it's the first time I've ever been asked to speak here. I obviously haven't prepared any kind of speech. I welcome all of you here in Vilnius and all those who joined online. I wish all of you to have a very memorable and inspiring time. All of you contribute to the growth of this event throughout the years, and I wish this would be a very successful new start. And I really would like to present our very esteemed guest that needs perhaps no presenting, our good friend Michael Finnissy, to address everyone in his keynote speech. Welcome, Michael. It's wonderful to have you. Michael, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello.
So welcome.
Yeah, so we look forward for a productive work, and now we proceed with the keynote lecture. As Andrews already mentioned, it's my privilege to once more introduce the composer and professor at the University of Southampton, Dr. Miloš Finnissy. And his presentation is entitled Synthesis, Composition, Spontaneity, Design. Welcome, the stage is yours.
Good morning, fellow musicians and delegates of this conference in Vilnius. We must be very grateful for these valuable meetings and the opportunity to discuss issues relating to art music. I am indeed very sorry not to be there and to be able to thank the organisers of this event in person. Unfortunately, heart disease and consequent travel difficulties have conspired to prevent my being with you in person. I'm grateful to have been asked to address you on the topic of this conference, which is synthesis. Let us remember it is human beings that initially made art, and only human beings that have, since prehistory, made music. Unlike cave paintings, some of which have survived, we can only guess at the nature of prehistoric music. In Europe, possibly the earliest known composer seems to be Hildegard of Bingen, who lived from 1098 to 1178. After 1148, when the ecclesiastical synod at Trier determined that her visions were not heretical, she dictated her music by singing. When what she called the living light was with her, there survived 77 vocal compositions, quite a large number, 77 vocal compositions for liturgical use, and a single drama, Sinfonia Harmoniae Celestium Revelationum. Ecstatic vision, recalled song, sung and transcribed as written symbols, is, I would say, already a complex, multiple instance of synthesis. As human beings, we interact incessantly with not one, but several distinct worlds. Hildegard's visionary world, the world of human consciousness, the world of creatures, animals, sensitive to their environment and capable of expressive reaction to it, the world of remembered past, of constantly disappearing present, and of anticipated future, the world of imagining, of possible, not actual, alternatives to lived experience, and the world of philosophizing and belief systems. From any or all these worlds spring our creativity. Our creativity can transit from one world to another, processing or synthesizing information. I compose music, which brings components from different sources into juxtapositions, different geographical and time zones. I synthesize life experiences as musical sound and form. I notate my work at my desk or at my piano, so I synthesize my thought processes with ears, and eyes and hands. And even though these are still relatively capable, they may also be imperfect. Mistakes can occur. But I have found that even imperfections can be instructive and useful. In some ways, I think of my writing as documentation, as research in which transcription plays a major role, and transcription in which synthesis also features prominently, if often questioningly. I have performed, solo and in ensemble, and also conducted music. To be useful, I now sing in the local church choir. I tell you this to indicate that I'm primarily a practitioner, an explorer, but also as a composer who has become a dramatist and even a kind of pedagogue, but only an amateur philosopher and theorist. I have divided this address into 3 sections: synthesis, composition, spontaneity or pre-planning. Here are 3 definitions of synthesis as one might apply them to music and musical composition. The first definition is from a dictionary. Synthesis, the dictionary tells me, is the putting together of parts or elements to make a composite whole. The putting together of parts or elements to make a composite whole. Secondly and thirdly, these are my definitions. Synthesis is an assemblage, a bringing together of things, even of dissimilar type and character, into a relationship, as found in visual artworks by Max Ernst, Magritte, Robert Rauschenberg, and David Hockney, let's say. Third definition, a filmic montage comprising different events, different times, and different locations. So in actuality, my experience of synthesis is I might be sitting at my desk, as I am now, or at the piano. Subsequently, I try to relate the actual lived experience, usually early in the morning before breakfast. A sound music thought occurs. I pause. My inner ear and imagination are activated, and I then begin to write, trying to capture the fleeting mixture of thoughts. Then, as the eye scans the initially rather muddled symbols, the inner ear manages to conjure their sound. This is synthesis in action. But firstly, what type of thing is the thought? A configuration of sounds, daydreaming, a reminiscence of something musical, some sort of rhythmic figure, a sonic flash of light, a sonic fog, the result of brain activity, something I have heard people call a donné, a gift, possibly from above, magic. And the hand that writes, people asked, has it been trained, somehow indoctrinated, learnt things according to tradition? Does one test or measure the hand's expertise? Would any of this help, clarify, or possibly destroy confidence. What can we assume about this moment of musical creation? Perhaps it depends on our experience or on our culture, our gender, our politics, our religion, our education, our family background and financial position, our aims and chosen role, assumptions about what really matters in music, independence, fashion, external demands, protocols or controls, or should we not interrogate the moment? Does this ruin the magic? The ear, eye, and hand conspire to act together. How does this happen? We can call it a special gift and not merely being human. It doesn't happen to everybody. We cannot be like a Juozas, write like Boulez, impress fans of Taylor Swift. It's a lonely road across a sort of desert. And of course, not all music proceeds from notation or a written image. Some composers describe themselves as improvisers or as jazzers, some as folk musicians. Let's hope there is mutual respect, because united we stand, divided we fall. Written down or not, the emphasis should not be placed on the initial thought or even the first notes, but on what happens next. The journey, the various adventures, the metamorphoses of those notes or sounds. The syntheses do not come to a halt. They persist, but maybe their focus shifts. This is when the idea becomes definitively composition. Compositio, a concept from the ancient world, a Latin word meaning a system, a formal placement or arrangement of things, and, interestingly, a reconciliation. Composition, the art and craft of putting things together, of creating continuity or continuities from a starting point that may already be the result of thought or creative synthesis. This continuity may also be indebted to tradition or intentionally reject traditional notations of continuity or draw on other art forms, for example, poetry, painting, drama, photography, film, and their symbolic continuities. By analogy, the demon of analogy, according to Roland Barthes. Music is a time-based art form, so these continuations will be subject to time or a sense of timing, in addition to the other borrowed structural attributes. Film editing, montage, might be a fruitful area of inquiry. Sergei Eisenstein, Abel Gance, D.W. Griffith, Orson Welles were pioneers in exploring this sphere of film editing. The American underground cinema, directors like Stan Brakhage, Gregory Markopoulos, Harry Smith, Jack Smith, and Andy Warhol were explorers. And, inter alia, European directors like Jean-Luc Godard and Derek Jarman. And, not disregarding nature. Yes, nature. Observing the manner of its operation, as embraced by John Cage. Many commentators neglect to mention the significance of harmonic balance. I put harmonic in inverted commas. Not the same thing as temporal equality, or more simply, just a sense of breathing, allowing relative tension and relaxation to be perceived. This may alternatively be achieved by reference to mathematical systems. A more mischievous synthesis will aim at creating surprises, pleasant, witty, or shocking, as part of the continuity. Form, then, form is best used as a verb. You form, they form, I form, rather than as a noun. In modern French, the transitive verb composer means to make up or to form, and, of course, formal behavior, strictly following the rules and conventions, can make anything appear perfunctory, prim, or even corpse-like. It's what you define it, how you define it. My teacher, Bernard Stevens, told me, writing counterpoint is like engineering a suspension bridge. Spontaneity, or the alternative, pre-planning. A rhetorical question. In order to compose meaningfully under less than ideal circumstances, can we rely on the capacity to instantly locate and synthesize randomly different types of musical experience? Or must we have sufficient time to find or otherwise assemble a set of rules or conventions that are trusted and true? This is something like the 19th century way people thought about musical composition. Can I go for a walk without taking a map with me? Can I find a space for elements of mystery and surprise? How does the composer face the world? Where are our resources other than within ourselves? Here are two historical accounts related to composition and composers. The first assumes that there is plenty of intelligent understanding of the need for and sensitivity towards new music, and sufficient enthusiasm and finances to back it up. Lots and lots of pre-planning. These are true examples, by the way, and they both take place after successive world wars. 4 years after the end of the First World War, a group of musicians met together to form the International Society for Contemporary Music. It was hoped that this would restore a vibrant, free-thinking culture from out of the wreckage, suffering, and disillusionment. The society would provide opportunities for new music to develop and grow, to be heard and discussed, and reassert itself as a vital art form. Most of the concerts would be small scale. Economics probably had a role to play here. Chamber music rather than symphonic or operatic music. An annual festival would be convened and an international jury would select the programs. The selection would reflect a wide spectrum of contemporary concerns without obvious bias or prejudice. A prototype series of concerts was held in collaboration with the Salzburg Festival that very same year, 1922. In those concerts, Bartók, Bax, Arthur Bliss, Bloch, Busoni, De Falla, Percy Grainger, Hindemith, Holst, Kodai, Mio, Nielsen, Willem Piper, Poulenc, Ravel, Schoenberg, Ethel Smythe, Richard Strauss, Stravinsky, Szymanowski, Webern, and many others were represented. They did rather a good job. At the 9th Festival in 1931, Webern's Symphony, Opus 21, was performed alongside Gershwin's An American in Paris, a piano sonata by Roger Sessions, 4 Japanese songs by Jan Makakiewicz, Hindemith's Wir bauen eine Stadt, and many others, so they were aesthetically diverse as well. The jury for these concerts included Kirchlein, Berg, and Casella. In the light of his future acclaim, it may be of interest to note that the music of Webern featured in 7 ISCM festivals between 1926 and 1946, but seemed to excite little, even specialist, interest. The next story is rather darker. 3 years after the end of the Second World War, and in Moscow, at the notorious Conference of Musicians held in January 1948, things were very different for the composers of new music. A quick reminder that Stalin's view was that writers were the engineers of human souls, and the post-war Soviet concept of art was that it should be educative and inspiring. But these idealistic words can be interpreted differently and have different implications for regimes with different ideologies. Prokofiev's music was, coincidentally, featured at the ISCM festivals in 1946 and June 1947, but 6 months later, one of the highest officials of the Politburo, Andrei Zhdanov, declared that there was a great big hole in the very foundations of Soviet music, and he isolated, as the culprits for creating this hole, Shostakovich, Prokofiev, Miastrovsky, Khachaturian, Popov, Kabalevsky, Shebalin, and Shaporin. These were the principal figures of the formalist school, and Zhdanov told the conference, "This school is radically wrong. It is alien to Soviet art, a renunciation of classical traditions. It is anti-people and prefers to cater for the individualistic experiences of a clique of aesthetes. The beautiful, natural, human intonations of music," Zhdanov said, "are replaced by false, vulgar, sometimes pathological music." The attacks continued, focusing on pessimism and introspection and insisting that what these sorts of composers write is not what our people want. But in practice, this was not so much raising the artistic or musical standards of the people, but lowering the standards of art and music, and to the lowest level of intelligence and instinct. The inherent premises of this dispute have since been endlessly synthesized in various forms by the press and media. Even the critical rhetoric is regularly recycled. What you write is not what people want. This music is chaotic and inharmonious, full of discords which hurt the ears without a single melody one could remember. Noises unsuitable to normal human hearing. Typical of this music is the rejection of the basic principles of classical music and the preaching of atonalism and dissonance, which are alleged to be signs of progress and innovation. These criticisms still occur in the United Kingdom press, the gutter press. So things are not always easy for synthesizers. 5 more questions for you to ponder and synthesize. If we are concerned about the quantity of sometimes ill-considered verbiage, supposedly articulating and defending our position, be able, oops, what does this mean? Sorry, I lost myself. Okay, the central point is it possible to continue composing meaningfully without verbal support, relying only on the sounds of our music? Can we rely on the past without questioning or confronting it? These are questions for the conference, incidentally. Do we over-determine our work? Do we allow space for the performer and the audience to find a way in? If we believe in an inclusive culture, free from prejudice, how do we render that symbolically, clearly and affirmatively in our work and in ourselves? Immense wealth and celebrity do not seem, to me, to be a good answer. The Industrial Revolution and artificial intelligence are probably not entirely reliable solutions either. Thinking caps on, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to take action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now it's time for questions, discussions. Who will start? Any comments?
It's a lot to digest.
Yeah, it's a lot to digest. Thank you very much for this very inspiring talk. What strikes me is, well, the difference between Lithuanian and, for instance, English languages. There are many of them, but what strikes me is how you tend to make verbs out of everything. It's very much different in Lithuanian. We don't Google things. We use Google search to search web. It's very strict. And when I was preparing for my Friday's talk about my own compositional struggles, I spent a great deal of research on musical form, what it is, and it never occurred to me to use form as a verb. The very concept is not something we would come up with in our language. I tried so hard to explain what I do, and you just put it in one sentence. So yeah, thank you for this.
Well, English has a tendency to oversimplify sometimes, but the problems, well, they're not problems, they're fun, actually. Finding solutions is great fun, I still think. And I did find some visual stimuli here, which at least worked for me. And this is about transcription too. I don't know whether you can see these. These are a series of paintings by David Hockney. And I don't know, there's the first one. Is that visible?
Yes.
Yes? This is a transcription by David Hockney of Claude Lorraine's painting, The Sermon on the Mount. Now, as you can see, he's not imitating Claude. And this series of paintings, I'll show them all to you so you can see what they're like. This is the first transcription. This is the second one. Turn the page in the book now. These are the third and fourth transcriptions. That one, oops, that one. Then there's this. Turn the page again. This one. That one. there's one more. Oh, two more, actually. This one. That one. And I think by now you can see what he's doing, which is he's taking the basic outline of the painting and changing the way that outline is interpreted and indeed imitating different styles of painting possibly, creating different entities but using the same shape. This interested me immensely when I saw this series of paintings, partly because I do a similar kind of thing in my transcriptions, which is I take something, an operatic scene by Verdi, let's say, and sometimes it resembles Verdi's original, and sometimes it really departs from Verdi's originals. The experiment, I suppose, in some ways, is seeing how far you can push something before it stops representing, in any way, the original object of the transcription. And so that's one reason why I emphasize the idea of forming, the actual making of the thing, rather than assuming that it's going to somehow fill a preconditioned space. Does that help?
Okay, so, yes?
Thank you very much for this really insightful presentation. I would just like to drop into this discussion from the linguistic point of view. Yeah, it is true that some languages tend to be more flexible and to introduce certain constructs, certain things that are not quite grammatical, but are somehow assimilated into language. Some languages are more conservative. It makes me think about this, not only using verbs, but I liked the idea Juozas uses, that the idea to substitute verb forms for infinitives. You know, the tree is too green, which is sort of divorced of any specific time or person, gender, anything, but conveys this idea of dynamism, of process and everything. But actually, I want to comment on something else. You were mentioning Stalin and Zhdanov, and it's amazing how these very same people who certainly did a lot to suppress art actually made very insightful comments about the way art works. Yes, music can be something like an engineering of human souls, and yes, there is even pathology in that. After all, we know about this mid-20th century idea of regression in the service of the ego, the same psychological regressive processes that are very clearly documented in psychiatric cases actually do operate in music. But this kind of regression in music is, in artistic creation in general, is reversible, is controlled, and of course it's always upgraded by things which are conscious, rational, which belong to knowledge, craft, tradition, culture, and things like that. But, you know, those guys really understood, those who were trying to suppress the art, actually very well understood what they were talking about. I don't know whether
Well, one problem, I think, is the way we tend to label things. I mean, I think a lot of people had problems with the word formalism, and actually, somewhere Andreas has a later copy, because I made about 10 different versions of this keynote address, and in one of them, I had a paragraph about Čiurlionis, which unfortunately wasn't in the version I read to you. I hope that Andreas has a copy of the later version of the talk, because I was trying to find words to describe Čiurlionis as a painter musician. And interestingly, one of Ždanov's favorite composers, who, if you're talking about formalism as musical constructs, Scriabin was a very much a prototype for a formalist approach to composing. I'm thinking of the Promethean chord, for example, which is made of various types of the interval of a fourth. And his moral position, let's say, rather decadent position, makes it odd that Ždanov actually thought he was the best thing since sliced bread, you know, as a composer. It's strange that I couldn't really come up with anything to describe the painter, Čiurlionis, except to compare him with other artists. So Gauguin, Munch, the painters of the symbolist school. And because Čiurlionis' artwork is not very well known in England, when I was looking at it again, I was thinking of other painters. So we're stuck with this lack of a language, actually, to describe music or painting or any other kind of art, except by comparison with something else that you might or might not know. So we're searching, aren't we, for descriptions which may possibly not be accurate, not be truthful. It makes things possibly eternally difficult, particularly, I think, in a culture where people possibly have less and less experience, go to galleries less, go to concerts less, so you're kind of adjudicating art in a quite strange way.
Okay.
Silence.
Thank you very much from my side as well. Very interesting, no doubt. I guess my question has to do with music and education. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bring up the whole universities shutting down their music departments in the UK. So kind of like that's the first part. How do you feel about this, like composition education in the UK in particular, if it will be able to survive this, let's say? And also, what is your opinion about teaching composition on an educational level in the global scene of, as it is today, or how you see it happening in, like, I don't know, a few years from now, a decade from now or something? I would be very curious about your thoughts. Thank you.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball with me. I'm not a soothsayer, so I really can't predict what's going to happen. When I was working for the ISCM, I travelled once to Frankfurt for a conference when the BBC started dumbing down, which is to say they stopped high-level discussion and broadcasting of aesthetic viewpoints and so on, and replaced it with kind of gossip, basically, you know. And the move, I mean, it's 25 years or 30 years ago since the universities in England anyway started to change their angle, usually influenced by government reports, government funding and so on and so forth. The universities have now become far more like employment exchanges than they have centres of learning. The emphasis is not learning the subject for its own sake. It's with a view to, can I get a job by doing this, which is placing the emphasis in a very different place to where it was before. I lament all of these things, and I'm very, very lucky that I managed to live through a period when learning for its own sake was still very much present. I retired from Southampton in 2018, so I'm not really very much in touch with what's going on now. What I observe is that it's kind of up to individual teachers within those institutions to maintain what standards and what levels of presentation of their subjects they can. I think it has probably always been like that, but there is obviously behind that an economic desperation, if you like, about how we finance things that are not immediately profitable. But whether this is an English topic or how it relates to the Lithuanian